Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here with episode number 2 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to be knowing where you're going with the Ultimate GPS Tracker project. What I will need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. So hopefully you have your coffee poured, because we are going to jump right into this project. Now, last week, what I showed you was how to solder up your Adafruit Ultimate GPS board and to put the pins on it so you could plug it into your breadboard. How did that work for you guys? Were you guys able to do a pretty clean solder job, at least well enough that you didn't damage the part? Hopefully so. In fact, you might just make a little video. If you could take a close-up picture of your solder job, make a little video of it, upload it, so the rest of us could sort of see how we're stacking up in the quality of our solder work. But like I say, I'm not a solder expert. I do it well enough that I usually don't hurt myself, and I do it well enough that I usually don't burn the part, but I am not the world's greatest solder. But hopefully you guys were able to do it. And so what I'm going to do show you today is I'm going to show you how to go ahead and get the GPS hooked up to the Raspberry Pi Pico W, and we're going to start getting a little data off of the GPS. Now, we're not going to make a lot of sense out of the data, but our goal today is to just get the GPS and the Raspberry Pi talking to each other and sort of seeing the data come in. Sound good? I hope it does. So what I need you guys to do is go to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com. It would be useful if I got out of your way. And then you're going to come up here to this happy little search icon up here, and you're going to search on something like incorporating an Adafruit Ultimate GPS into your Raspberry Pi Pico W project. Okay, and you'll come down here and we'll have this schematic. Maybe if I click on that, I can get a bigger picture of it, a little bit easier to see. Maybe not. Okay, oh, that should go. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so you can see that a little better. Let me get a little further out of your way here. And you can see that I've got my GPS, I've got my Raspberry Pi Pico W. Now you can run the GPS off of 5 volts, and if you're going to run it off of 5 volts, you bring the 5 volts into VN, or you can run it on 3.3 volts. If you're going to run it on 3.3 volts, you bring the power into this 3.3 volt pin over here. Now, since the Raspberry Pi Pico W is 3.3 volts, it would really be nice to operate it at 3.3 volts. But on my GPS, and I will say I have a little bit of an older one, it's a version 3, but I have a little bit of an older one, it seems to have trouble getting a fix when it's operating at 3.3 volts. I don't know why. Maybe the more recent versions of the version 3 do not have that problem, but for me, I'm running at 5 volts. So I get my 5 volts here from the rail, and I establish that 5 volt rail using the V bus. Okay, the V bus pin here, this is pin 40. This is bringing 5 volts right off of your USB cable down here, and then that will power up your GPS. All right, then ground is ground. And then what I need you to see here very, very carefully is we're going to start over here on the Raspberry Pi Pico W, and we're going to start at GPIO pin 9. Now, like if you look at your handy dandy little pinout for your Raspberry Pi Pico W, you can see that GPIO pin 9 is actually the UART RX. So my green wire here is RX. That RX from the Pi Pico goes to TX on the Raspberry Pi Pico W. And similarly, GPIO pin 8 on the Raspberry Pi Pico W is actually TX. So this orange wire, TX on the Raspberry Pi Pico W, goes to RX on the GPS. So instead of TX to TX and RX to RX, it's sort of switched. TX talks to RX and RX talks to TX. Okay, it goes like that. And so you've got to kind of make sure, because when you look at this, you might think, you hooked this up wrong, but no, you've got to cross them over like that. Okay, and then of course we established a ground rail here. That is pretty easy to hook up, and I will show you here. I've hooked mine up. I plugged my USB cable in, and you can see this happy little blinking red light. It's about a second on and a second off. What that means is that the GPS is turned on, it's fired up, it's not found satellites yet. So once you find the satellites, it's called getting a fix. Once you find a satellite, what you'll see here is you'll get a very short blink and then off for several seconds, and a very short blink and off for several seconds. But we just plugged this in, and right now I am not getting a fix. Now I need to talk to you a little bit about my setup versus your setup. I am sitting here and I've got this thing in my studio. I have this thing in my studio and I've got it on my desktop, and everything is working just fine. Why? Because I have a grass roof, and the GPS can see straight through that grass roof. If you have a more traditional roof and you are just sitting with the GPS on your desktop, you likely are never going to find the satellites. Okay, so what do you need to do? You need to take this and you need to put it, take this and you need to put it in a window, and you need to be looking out the window. You need to take this and you need to put it in the window. And I even like to kind of tilt it where the little antenna is looking at a large segment of the sky. So you might need to move your computer over closer to the window, or you might need to get a longer GPS cable. Or if you got the little antenna, which I linked to in last week's lesson, you could connect that antenna up. You could connect that antenna up to this little connector here. You have a little pigtail in that kit. You plug that pigtail in here, then in the SMA connector you screw the antenna cable on, and then you can go put that antenna very nicely in the window, or maybe actually outside the window where you get a clear view of the sky. But one of the big things that we will be working on in this project is getting and maintaining a fix, and you will not get or maintain a fix if your little antenna here does not have a clear view of the sky. Okay, so I talked way too long about that. And what I need to do is we need to come over here and we need to get ready to start coding. And so we've talked about hooking this up. We've talked about the UARTs, we've talked about the power, and so now I think we are ready to come over and we're ready to start coding. So what is our goal today? Our goal is to just see, if we can start pulling data off the GPS. We're not going to be able to make sense of the data today, but we're just going to see if we can read the data. Now, what I will tell you is the GPS does not operate in a nice client-server relationship like you would like to say, hey, send me lat, and it would say the lat is, or you'd say, send me lawn, and it would send you the lawn, or maybe if it sent you lat, lawn, and elevation, that would be nice. But no, what it does is it just spews data. It vomits data out at you. It doesn't listen. It just spews data. And so over on the Python side, you've got to be ready to catch that data, because it's going to be coming at you fast and furious. And so a lot of what we're going to be doing is catching and then trying to interpret the data as it comes in. Now, in most videos on YouTube, this is the point where they would tell you download this library, and you download the library, and in 3 minutes you would be getting lat, lawn, and elevation. Okay, but you see, if all you want is lat, lawn, and elevation, you might as well just get out your iPhone and read it off of that or whatever phone you have. The purpose of this class is to teach you how the GPS system works, and to teach you how to programmatically at a low level interact with those GPS satellites and interact with your receiver. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how things really work. And if you are going to, just want the easy way out, then this isn't the right series of lessons for you. Okay, I probably just lost half of my audience right there, okay? But I want to teach you guys. I want you to learn, because when you learn, you build connections in your brain. You start learning how to think critically. You start learning how to troubleshoot. You start learning how to think creatively, okay? Think critically, think creatively. That's what I want you to do. And that's why I teach the way I teach. Okay, enough of that. So with that, though, we now need to get the data off of the GPS, and we need to get the data into our Raspberry Pi Pico W. So we're going to jump in here, and we're going to say from machine import. We're using pins. We're going to say pin. I2C we might need, and UART, like that. Okay, what is UART? UART is that TX and RX that we're talking to it on. UART is also what the USB cable talks over. That talks over UART as well. And so we've got to be a little bit mindful that we don't kind of cause trouble on our UART that the USB cable needs, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So we've got pin, I2C, and UART. We're going to also import time. And now this is your money line of code, and that is GPS. I'm going to create a GPS object. Where is the GPS object? It is on UART, that method that we just imported. Now, if you look, those pins 8 and 9 are actually UART 1. On your Raspberry Pi Pico W, you have UART 0 and you have UART 1. We are actually on UART 1, so we've got to tell it that. And then we have to tell it our baud rate is 9600. Now, how do I know that? Because this Adafruit Ultimate GPS, when you power it on, it boots up at 9600 baud rate. Okay, now if you want to use a different baud rate, you would have to talk to it at 9600. You would have to send it a command to change its baud rate, and then you would have to begin talking to it at that other baud rate. But since the 9600 is infinitely fast for as much data as we have coming in, I see no reason to change that. But if for some reason you needed to change it, there are ways that you can send commands to the Adafruit GPS to change the baud rate that it talks to you over. Okay, so we've got that. Now I got to tell it what my TX pin is. My TX pin is going to be equal to machine.pin. And what did we say? That was the GPIO pin 8 on the Raspberry Pi Pico W. And on the Raspberry Pi Pico W, the RX is machine.pin. And that was GPIO pin 9, and then close everything out there. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to run this. Absolutely nothing's going to happen, but I just want to make sure I don't have some silly mistake in this one line of code. So if we run this, okay, nothing happened. We didn't get an error, so at least we haven't made any ridiculous errors. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to have to do a try and an except. Now, why am I going to do that? Because as I'm reading data off of that UART, if I'm not careful and just stop the program without closing that UART, I have found that I can sort of lock up my USB cable where I can't talk to the Raspberry Pi Pico W anymore, and I have to unplug it and let it die and then plug it back in. And so really we want to do a try and an except keyboard interrupt like that. Okay, and then what do we want to do? Well, we're going to print. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put a line feed here just in case I'm in the middle of a sentence. I'm going to put a \n, which will give it a line feed, and then I'm going to say like ... and then cleaning up UART. So the person sees that that's happening, and then I'm going to do a GPS. That's our UART object. Deinitialize like that. Okay, and then I'm going to say time.sleep for a second. Okay, and then I'm going to say print cleanly exited UART like that. Okay, because I'll tell you guys, the first time you start your GPS, it's called a cold start. And on that cold start, it can take 15 or 30 minutes to get a fix, to find where it is, to get those satellites found, get its almanac created, figure out what's going on. It like wakes up and then it starts trying to figure out what's going on. And that can take 15 or 30 minutes. And so what you really hate is you hate that in debugging your program, you end up locking up to UART. And so that's why we want this clean way to exit. Now, what are we going to try to do? We are now going to put what would be our main loop of the program, which is going to be while true. When is true true? True is always true. And now what am I going to do? I'm just going to say my char. I'm going to read a character is equal to my object GPS dot read like that. And then what do I want to read? I want to read one character only. Okay. Now, if I just try to go read a character, the way the data comes off of this thing is it vomits out data and then it pauses. And it vomits out data and then it pauses. And if you read when there's no data there, this thing would die. You would get an error. And so what I want to do is I want to say if gps.any, like that, if gps.any, then what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and I'm going to tab that in. So this is going to be my main while loop. I'm going to see, is there any data? If there is any data, I am going to read the data. If there is any data, I'm going to read the data, 1 byte of data into my char. Okay, for my character. Now let's just live dangerously and just say print my char like that. Okay, now what I'm going to ask you guys to do over here, what I'm going to ask you to do is, so that we're starting with just a clean start, so we're going to unplug this. Now whatever satellites or whatever this guy had learned, he's forgotten it, and now we're going to power it back up. Okay, we're going to power it back up. We get the blinking light, and now we're going to come over here and we're going to see if we can find anything. Okay, so can we even talk to the GPS, or do I have errors in here? So let's see. Okay, line 13 it is not happy with. So what is that line 13? D init GPS line 13. That was a simple thing. I jumped down to the complicated lines and it just not put my close quote there. Okay. Whoa, look at that. So what do you see? You see all of this data coming in, right? It is just spewing out data at us. Now, the data doesn't mean anything, but what's the good news? The good news means that we didn't totally ruin our GPS with our solder job, and the Raspberry Pi Pico W is talking to the GPS and it is getting data. Now, what do we see? We see this B character, which is like a byte character. And what does that mean? That means that it's reading bytes, and right when we do that, if you remember our earlier lessons in the class, we really need to do what up here? We need to take that byte and we need to decode it, and let's just decode it with a UTF-8 like that, and I'm hoping with that it should take that byte character off. Okay, I'm hoping that it should take the byte character off and clean that up just a little bit. Also, what I want you to see is, let me see if I can stop this. What I want you to see is it's giving us all of these characters, and then it gives like a carriage return and a line feed. So what is it building in to this data stream? It's building in a character return and a line feed. But the first thing we want to do is we want to see if we can get rid of this B, and we're going to try to do that by doing a .decode. And that should not be unequal there. And man, that really, I made a mess of that, didn't I? Okay, so we're going to try to do a decode. Now let's run this thing again. Okay, and what happened? What happened is that it was running and that time it killed it. So it's really better if we kill it with a Control-C when we want to kill it. So let's try it again. Line 9, it doesn't like line 9. What did I do? One too many? Yeah, one too many. You got it? Now let's try it. Okay, now look at this. Now what has happened, I've cleaned it up where I'm getting a data stream that looks a lot better. Okay, I'm getting a data stream that looks a lot better. So you see, it's sending me data. I don't know what it means, but it's sending me data that doesn't have that B on there. Okay, now what I want you to see is we're reading a char and then we're printing a char. Read a char, print a char. Every time I put this print, the print command itself goes to a new line. And so this problem of getting the data up and down, part of that problem we're creating because the print command puts one of those \n's on the end of whatever you're printing, and then that's making you scroll down. What do we know? We know that it has those \n's and r's already in the data stream where it wants it. So I need to tell it to print where the end character, to print with an end character of like this. So don't put, I'm telling when you print, don't use an end character. And that should be equal. So when you print, don't use an end character. All right, does that make sense? I think I might need to pull this up just a little bit. Okay, so now let's run this thing, and we are going to run it. And boom, look at that. All of a sudden, it seems like we are getting data that might actually begin to mean something. Okay, so I am going to stop this, and I'm going to try to get this up here where you can see it. Okay, I'm going to stop this and see if I can get up here where you can see it. Now, what is this GP, GGA, and GPGSA nonsense? Those are your NMEA sentences. Those are your NMEA sentences, okay? And those will contain the data that you need for things like your location, your latitude, your longitude. Those will include things like what time is it? Those will include things like your elevation. How many satellites are you looking at? How strong are those satellite signals that you are getting? Okay, and so those are going to be some very, very interesting things. But right now, what is the problem? Right now, the problem is these NMEA sentences are almost all empty. Right? They're almost all empty. Like there should be data here, data here, data here, data here. Why do we not have data? If we look at this, we're still slow blinking on, off, on, off. And with that slow blink, it's saying that we have not found a fix yet. We are looking for satellites, we're building our almanac, but we are not there yet. Now, as time goes on, and what did I say? I said that it can take 15 to 30 minutes to get a fix, and it can take up to an hour to really get everything figured out. And we'll talk about how to deal with that later, but right now we're just going to kind of watch this as it unfolds. So for right now, what I want you to do is I want you to be paying attention to the GP GGA sentence, the GP GGA sentence. Now, one thing is this tells you what time it is, but it tells you in coordinated universal time. And so this is the hour. So in coordinated universal time, or UTC time, this is the 6th hour. This is the 22nd minute. And if you look right now, it's the 24th minute. Like if I look at my watch, it's 24 after the hour, but I've been talking for 2 minutes. So when I took this, it was 22 minutes after the hour. 18 seconds and then 0.086 seconds. So this thing keeps time and reports you time down to 1/1000th of a second. So you've got to, if you want to parse this, this is 6 hours UTC. You'll have to convert UTC to your time, and then 22 minutes, 18 seconds, and then 0.086 seconds. So I guess you could say that this was 18.086 seconds. You could read it that way. So in your GPGGA, this first number gives you some sort of information about the time. Okay, now what I want you to see is that we have no data, no data, no data, no data, and then I've got a 0. Well, what is that? This tells you the sentence type. The 0th position tells you the sentence type. This tells you UTC time. If we had a number here, that would be our latitude, but it's latitude in really strange units. So I'll have to talk to you next week about latitude and longitude. Now, the next position, which is the position 3, it's going to tell you either north or south, an N or an S, telling you you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. Then this is going to be the longitude, okay, in very strange units. And then the next thing after that is going to be north or south. Are you in, or I'm sorry, are you in longitude? Are you in the eastern hemisphere or the western hemisphere? So it's going to tell you north or south for hemisphere, east or west for hemisphere, and it's going to tell you latitude and longitude. Now, what it tells you next is a 0. And what this 0 tells you is you don't have a fix. Now, you know you don't have a fix because if you looked over here, you can see that slow blink. So you know that you don't have a fix. And then this next number tells you the number of satellites. Okay, the next number tells you the number of satellites. Well, we don't have a fix and we haven't figured out any satellites yet. So we are kind of like stone cold losers at this point. But this takes time. This takes time to find the satellites, and it takes time to get things going. Now, if I start running the program again, I haven't lost anything because as long as it's been powered, it's trying to create that almanac, and it's up looking around. There's a lot going on right now with this slow blink. It's just so far we really don't have any progress yet. But remember, the key thing is you want to be looking at this GPGGA. Now, you need to make notes of this because you're going to need to know this going forward. This is time. I explained this. This one is latitude. This one is, are you in the northern or southern hemisphere, an N or an S? This is going to be your longitude in very strange units. Then this is going to be hemisphere, east or west. This is whether you have a fix. 0 means no fix. 1 means GPS. You have a normal fix. And a 2 means you have a differential GPS fix. Okay, so you want this number, you want this number to be either a 1 or a 2, and then you'll start getting data in these. And then this one is your number of satellites. Okay, so let's just try this again and see if anything has happened. And I will tell you then. Let's do this. And so we're keeping right now. We're keeping our eye on this GPGGA sentence. So let's run it again. And again, we're not starting over, right? We're not starting completely over. All right, we're just going out and grabbing a little more data. Now let's look at our GPGAA. We still don't have a fix and we still don't have any satellites. And so things are still just kind of cooking here. But there is another sentence that it spits out. There is another sentence that it just randomly spits out, and that is the GPGSV. The GPGSV, and I'm going to talk about that. But that comes randomly, so you might have to look for it. What is the normal pattern? It's the GGA, GSA, RMC, VTG. And you'll see that pattern, GGA, GSA, RMC, VTG, GGA, GSA, RMC, VTG. You'll see that's the order that those four sentences come out in. This is your basic block here, starting with GPGGA, which we'll be using a lot, and ending with GPVTG. So this is going to be your normal block. But randomly, it is going to spit out this GPGSV sentence, all right? And this you can look at to help you understand, are you on your way to a fix? Okay, are you on your way to a fix? And so let me come over here. Give me just a second. That is the GSV. I've made notes over here and I want to look at my notes. GSV, so we can kind of get that figured out what's going on. So the GSV sentence allows you to sort of see what is going on. Now, what this says is it has one message for me. That's the one message, all right? And this is message 1 of 1. Now, as I start making progress towards a fix, it might say that there are 3 messages, and this is message 1 of 3, and then immediately following that will be another GSV, which will say there's 3, and this is message 2 of 3, and then the next sentence will be this is message 3 of 3. So you can see that this is message 1 of 1. And then we don't have another GPGSV sentence because it sent me 1, and I'm looking at that 1 of 1. All right. Now, this is where it gets interesting. It says that it sees right now 1 satellite. So as it's been looking around, it sees 1 satellite, and that satellite is satellite number 18. Okay. It can't tell me where the satellite is. It can't tell me anything about the satellites. It's not giving me any information about the satellites, but at least it's hearing, and it saw 1 satellite, which was satellite number 18. Okay, let's run this again and see if it finds anything else out. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of just watching until I see a GPGSV sentence come in. Sometimes you can kind of see it as it goes by. There, I see 1. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and look at this. What do we see now? There's still 1 message. This is message 1 of 1. It sees 2 satellites. Okay, it sees 2 satellites. The first satellite is satellite number 18. Okay, now, what it would tell me if it had gotten more comfortable with satellite 18, it would tell me its elevation, and it would tell me its azimuth. So what is elevation? It would tell me that it's seeing that satellite at this angle and then this angle over. But right now, all it is telling me is it is seeing 1 satellite, which is satellite number 18. It's not telling me where it is in elevation, and it's not telling me where it is in azimuth or compass direction from north, moving clockwise from north, but it's telling me that it has a signal strength of 25 dB. Now, what I'll tell you about signal strength is we got to kind of know about signal strength. Between 20 and 30 is a weak signal. Between 30 and 40 is a good signal, and between 40 and 50 is a very good signal. So we have just barely got anything here. We've got 1 satellite that we see, and we see that satellite very, very poorly. Well, not very poorly. It's not poor. It's a weak signal. 1 satellite with a weak signal. Maybe that is why it is not reporting. Maybe that's why it's not reporting its elevation or azimuth. But wait a minute. It also sees, what does it say? It says that now it sees 2 satellites. It sees number 18. Doesn't tell us where it is. It's got a signal strength of 25. And it sees satellite number 23. and it doesn't tell us where it is in elevation or azimuth, but it does tell us its signal strength is 18, which is down, which we would call poor. Okay, so I've got one weak satellite, I've got one weak satellite at 25 and one poor satellite at 18. I'm seeing satellite 18 and I'm seeing satellite 23. Okay. Looks kind of hopeless at this point, doesn't it? But we got to give it time. Okay, we got to give it some time, and let's see as I just come in, and I'll pause it here in a minute because you guys are going to get tired of watching this, and then you guys can just kind of watch this SV sentence on your own. Okay, so now I'm going to come in here, and I'm looking for that SV. I thought I saw one go by. Okay, there's one. Okay, again, still just seeing two satellites, no new information there. So you're just going to have to let this thing run for a little while. What I said is to get a fix, it can take between 15 minutes and 30 minutes to get your fix. And as you're watching, the first sentence that you'll begin to see data on is that SSV sentence, right? The what is it? I don't want to say it wrong. GPGSV. That's the first place that you'll start seeing action. And then you'll see on the GPGGA, you'll see that field over there telling you that your 0 is going to go from a 1, and it'll tell you how many satellites you have. Now, the other thing I'll tell you is in the GPGSV sentence, it might say that I see 14 satellites, but then on your fix, it might say that you're using 5 because it's not going to use all the satellites that it sees. It's only going to use the ones that help it understand its location. And so now I'm going to stop this and let's see if we can find that GPGSV sentence again. A GPGSV sentence. Okay. Still what we have is two satellites. We've got satellite 18 now at a signal strength of 16, and we've got satellite 23 at a signal strength of 18. So we're still not doing very good. So I think what the best thing for me to do at this point is pause the video, and then when this thing has a little bit more action going on, I'll come back and you guys can just kind of keep running it. And remember, when you stop it and restart it, you're not interrupting the GPS. The GPS is here and it's looking around trying to find stuff, and so that is going to be ongoing. You're not interfering with that when you stop the program, so you can look at your GPGSV sentences. But what we want to see is we want to see this begin to populate all the way across. Then we want to start seeing that we've got two GPGSV sentences. We've got three GPGSV sentences in a row. Start seeing those things fill in, and then when you see that, then start watching this GPGGA sentence. Okay, so you guys just keep watching it, and then I will check back in with you in a minute. Okay, guys, and we're back, and I'd appreciate if you guys would leave a comment down below what your experience was in watching those GPGSV sentences go by. What I found was that not much action for a long time. It would say, well, I see two satellites, this one and this one, low strength, not going to tell you anything else. Oh, no, I see this one, and just kind of like it had its eyes closed, just wandering around in the dark trying to find things. And then all of a sudden, boom, I went from getting one GPGSV sentences to getting 3, and then very quickly after that I got 4. And so now let's look at this GPGSV sentence, and we can talk a lot more about what we have. So okay, what this is telling me is that I have 4 GPGSV sentences. It's telling me this is GPGSV sentence number 1. It has found 14 satellites that it is looking at. The first satellite it's going to tell me about is satellite 25. Your satellite will be something different, but it's going to tell me about satellite number 25. Okay, and now what this is going to tell me, it is going to tell me the elevation. So what this is saying is that satellite 25 is at an elevation of 68 degrees, meaning that that's getting pretty high up there, almost overhead, and it is at an angle, it is at a heading of 90 degrees. Okay, 88 degrees, let's say. So what that's saying is you're 88 degrees east of north. So this is almost due east, and 68 degrees up, there is a satellite. Then satellite number 31. It is at a lower in the sky elevation, 23 degrees and 67 degrees. Again, sort of in the easterly direction, but 67 degrees towards east. And it is at a, let me see. No, I think I messed up there. So let me start here. So this is 14 satellites. Satellite 25 is at 68 degrees elevation. Yes, it is at 88 degrees heading, almost due east. Yes. 31 is its what? It's its signal strength. And a signal strength of 31 is really okay. A signal strength of 31 is really okay. It would be called good. Okay, so 20 to 30 is weak, 30 to 40 is good, below 20 is poor, and 40 to 50 is very good, and 50 or above is excellent. So 31, it's good. Now we are looking at satellite number 23. It is at an elevation of 67 degrees, and it is at 160 degrees, which would put it almost at south. 180 would be south, okay? 160 is over here at an angle of 23 degrees, okay? And then it has a signal strength of 25, which is not so good. It's weak, okay? Now satellite 18 is at 47 degrees elevation. It's at 330 degrees, which is almost back to north, okay? And it has a signal strength of 15. Then I've got satellite number 12. It is at an elevation of 37 degrees, 121 degrees in heading, and it is at 17 dB strength. Okay, so how does this work again? This is, I have 14 satellites. All right, let's get the first one here. I have 14 satellites. The first satellite I see is 25. It's at an elevation of 68 degrees. It's at a heading of 88 degrees from north, and then it is got a signal strength of 31. Now I'm not going to go through every line of this, but you can see that I have got now four of these GP, G, SV sentences, and with that there are enough in there that I am getting a fix now. And how do I know I have a fix? Two reasons. Do you see my blinking light? It's like every 10 seconds it just blinks very, very briefly. So I've got an almost not blinking situation here. There, blink. You see it like every 10 seconds it blinks. Now that we're there, we can come down and look at our GP GGA sentence. Now, what is this? This is 7 hours coordinated universal time. It is 13 minutes after that and 48 seconds. And we hit it right on the nose at 000 as far as the fraction of a second. So it's 48 seconds exactly to the thousandth of a second. This, in some weird, bizarre way that I will explain next week, is your latitude. And this latitude is what you can see is telling me I'm in the northern hemisphere, which is true. And then this is going to be longitude in some strange way that I will explain next week. And in longitude, it says I am in the eastern hemisphere. That is right. Now, what is this? This one says that I have a fix. I have a normal fix, and I have how many satellites? 5. Now, up here, it sees 14, but of those 14, it has chosen 5 that help it find its position. Okay, it's using 5 from which it will determine its position. Now, this 1.43. What that is telling me is it's kind of telling me like a dilution or like a dilation, like how much diluted is your signal. And the lower the number, the better. So the lower this number is, the more clearly you are discerning your position from the satellites. Okay. Now this one tells you what your elevation is. Now this is telling me that I'm at an elevation of 249 meters, and that's way off. Okay, and that's because I only have 5 satellites at this point, and I'm going to need more than 5 satellites to get a good elevation. Now you can get a good lat long position. You can get your position on the surface of the Earth pretty good with 5 satellites, but if you want to start looking at elevation, you need to do better than that. Let's run this and see where we are. Let me run it again. Get some more recent data. And then if I look at my GPGSV, again 4, and I look at GPGAA, I'm still at 5 satellites. But now look, I'm at 836 meters. Okay, so what is this? 5 satellites. This is, the lower this number is, the better your fix is, the better your ability to determine where you are is. And then this is now saying I am at 836 meters. So you see, I think I'm at like 1,112, something like that. And so as time is going on and I'm finding more better satellites, this elevation number is going to increase. Okay, guys. So the big deal is I've got a fix, and that fix is using 5 satellites. All together, I can see 14 satellites. Now, if you've gotten to an hour and you haven't gotten a fix yet, right? The fix is, you have a fix by the blinking light, and you have a fix when this GPGGA, and that is the 6th position when you start counting at 0, right? So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That 6th position, 1 tells you you've got a fix, and then the 7th position tells you how many satellites you have. Now, if you've been at this an hour and you don't have a fix yet, maybe you ruined your GPS when you soldered it, but probably not, hopefully not. Maybe if you just went and put this outside and let it see clearly the sky, let it see very clearly the sky, and then within 15 to 30 minutes you should be seeing things, and then by an hour you should be getting pretty good numbers on here. Okay, guys. All right. Well, that is kind of exciting. I think we've made some very good progress today. We've learned how to get data off of the GPS, and we've started to kind of bust that data up and break it down and see what's going on. So what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to kind of show you sort of like 2 things, like how is it from these satellites in space we figure out where we are on the surface of the Earth using the GPS, a little bit about the specifics of how that works. And then what I'll be talking about is a little bit more about how latitude and longitude work in general. Like you think, okay, I've got a lat lon, but a lot of people don't really know what it means, like in terms of math or physics or whatever. Like what does that lat lon number actually mean? Okay. And then the third thing I'll be talking about is on this GPGGA sentence, how to take this strange number here and turn that into latitude, and how to take this strange number here and turn that into longitude. So that is what I will be doing next week. Okay, guys, I hope this lesson wasn't too tedious for you. Please leave a comment down below, because I'd really love to know, is this just going in a direction that's way too tedious for you, or did you have fun starting to see live data coming in and knowing that next week we're going to start understanding that data better? So I really appreciate a comment down below. Also, at this point is when I give a shout out to my Patreons. I cannot continue to deliver quality content week by week without the support of my Patreon. So thanks a lot for that. You can also help by leaving a thumbs up on this video and a comment down below. That will help me with the old YouTube juice. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. You'll be notified when future lessons drop. And most importantly, share this video with other people, because the world needs more people knowing where they're going by building GPS trackers and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.